Mr. Raghav is the chairman of Podar Education. Obviously, again, needs no introduction. Fantastic. I usually use the word, he's a true brand ambassador for Indian education to the world. And having said this, we interacted last year very, very extensively on IPN, and it's always a pleasure having him. And for the year 2021, this is our first interaction with Raghav as well. So welcome, Raghav. Good to have you, Mr. Raghav Podar. Over to you.
Yes, Gaurav. First of all, thank you for having me here. It's my pleasure. And I always enjoy addressing your audience at the IPN because, as I always say, that it's passion and not pedigree that's going to take us forward. And you have with you in this IPN forum a bunch of very passionate educators who truly want to make a difference in the lives of the children, which is far more important than just going for a COE training workshop and just getting a tick mark or a check mark against your name that I've completed that training. So happy to be here. Gaurav, you mentioned something about the hand of God, and we need a hand of God now. Yes, we do need a hand of God, but we actually have millions of hands of God around us in the schools. And by that, I mean not only our students, but our teachers. They are the hands of God. People talk about them being COVID warriors and all. Yes, they are. And Guru Deva Bhava, Acharya Deva Bhava, they are the true hands of God in each of our schools. So hats off to all of you teachers there. The education system of the entire world, the way education is delivered to students is at the cusp of a dimensional shift. The way curriculum was transacted up until now has been disrupted by this pandemic, and we can and have to ensure that it's for the better. The way this pandemic has hit us, there's no doubt in anyone's mind that digital transformation has changed the way education is being delivered in classrooms across the world. More importantly, though, is the purpose aligned with the way these trends are emerging? In this hot pursuit of the latest in virtual learning environments, and AR, and AI, and mixed reality, and blended learning, have we missed the woods for the trees? Now, it's not a question of if, but when. At least some of these technologies will become mainstream in classrooms across the world. And even after the pandemic is over, when we restart schools in the campuses in full-fledged form, even then, I hope that the education is going to be blended. It's going to be the new normal, which is going to be phygital, which is physical and digital. But the fundamental question still lies, is in are we serving the purpose of education? Getting our children ready with the 21st century skills that they're going to require? Or are we just finding fancier ways of lesson delivery through e-pedagogues? Now, there is no better time than a crisis. They say never waste a good crisis. There is no better time than a crisis that forces us to grow and wakes us up from that slumber of rudimentary pedagogy. We can ill afford another education system that prepares students in and tests students for skills that they won't even require in their 21st century lifetimes. This is the time of transition when these trends are still evolving and still forming. And it is incumbent upon us, especially the education thought leaders, influencers, principals, and the hands of God, to shoulder this responsibility, to steer this evolution of education in the direction which will truly benefit our 21st century learners the most. Our posterity is going to look back at this time as one of those defining moments that comes once in centuries. And they're going to either thank us for the direction in which we took this evolution of education, or they're going to curse us for not rising up to the occasion when we had the opportunity in our hands. We're preparing our children for jobs that don't exist yet. They are going to be solving problems that we don't even know are problems yet by using technologies that haven't even been invented yet. So we're preparing our children for lives 20, 30, 40 years from now when we don't know what the next 2 months are going to look like. This is the time to truly espouse, live, breathe, embody, imbibe those 21st century skills and in our students and in ourselves. We all, on the biggest, fanciest education conclaves of the world, spoke about these 21st century skills. And what are those 21st century skills that people spoke about? Well, we are in 2021. So when we talk about 21st century skills, we have to realize we are already 21 years into the 21st century. Let's not forget that. But yet those skills of ability to cope with limited resources, the ability to be agile, be flexible, resilient, the skill of crisis management, the the skill of self-reliance, independence, independent learners, become a critical thinker, problem solver. Now, which of these skills do our tests and exams measure? This is the time truly. The pandemic has given us that opportunity to change the way education is being delivered in classrooms and move away from that over obsession of marks. India and a lot of Asia runs behind marks. Come Jan, Feb, March, and the entire country is running behind marks, 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 marks. And what are marks? What are tests? Tests are meant to be diagnostic. They are meant to diagnose the strengths and the weaknesses of the child so the teacher can adjust her lesson delivery accordingly. That's all what tests are. Yet, tests have become a way, a measure to put a label on a student's forehead in our country on the basis of their intelligence. So if you get 95, you're considered a genius. You got a genius label on your forehead. And if you get 70, oh, average. You get 40, people use pathetic terms like duffer or silly or stupid. And who gives you the right to say that some child who has got 40 in a test, which is primarily measuring memorization and regurgitation, and that makes him unintelligent? We don't have the right to say that. In the 21st century, today, already children have access to Google, and with that, access to limitless information. By the time they grow up, they are going to be auto-prompted with AI and other technologies for the information that they'll be requiring to complete their next task. And yet here, we are running behind just the memorization and regurgitation. It needs to change. In the 21st century, the world economy is not going to reward you for how much you know, but for what you can do with what you know. Not for the amount of knowledge that you have, but for how you apply the knowledge that you have. Now, about the top priorities. So one is obviously changing the over-obsession of marks, moving from content mastery to competence mastery. But I'm going to go beyond this topic a little bit and not talk only about a pandemic hangover related priority of mine. I'm going to talk about a priority that's whether a pandemic comes or doesn't come. That's another very, very big priority of mine. And I should shout about it from the rooftops at every forum, which is attracting the best minds of the country into the teaching profession. The quality of an education system of a country is directly proportional to the quality of the teachers of that country. How do we attract the best minds? We have to limit the barriers to entry. So for example, if there's a student in the US in a university and they want to learn chemistry, they might be, or economics, their professor could literally be a Nobel laureate or somebody who is trying to become a Nobel laureate and is probably 5 years away or 3 years away from becoming a Nobel Prize winner in chemistry or economics. In India, I'm talking about schools now, not higher ed, but if somebody who is an expert in their field wants to come and teach in a CBSE school, they first have to get a B.Ed. Which expert in the field is going to spend another couple of years getting a B.Ed so that they can teach in a school? Fine, then you'll have guest lectures, you'll have them for some time, but that doesn't give the true immersion of the quality of teaching learning process that that person, that expert can provide. And India has the experts. It's not like we don't have them. But there are so many barriers to entry into teaching for that expert. Apart from that, the respect. So people talk about Finland. Finland is one of the top performing education systems of the world, consistently ranks at the top of the PISA rankings, TIMSS rankings, and all of that. And people think it's been like that since forever. It hasn't. In the 70s, Finland was actually one of the lower performing OECD and European countries as far as education was concerned. But in the 70s, the National Ministry of Education decided that we're going to change the way the teachers are recruited and taken into the system. So now to become a teacher in Finland, you have to be 1 out of 10. 10% of people who enroll for a B.Ed equivalent course in Finland actually get selected. And even fewer graduates of that B.Ed course actually go on to become teachers. So they're true experts. I'm not at all in any way suggesting to take this solution from Finland and parachute it into India and it's going to be a panacea. It's not. Of course, you have to customize it. The circumstances are different. Of course, it has to be tailor-made for Indian the requirements. But the underlying thought, the fundamental of bringing the teacher at the center, we've had such a rich legacy of Guru Dev Bhava, Acharya Dev Bhava. We need to bring back that respect and reverence for our teachers into the teaching profession, and that is going to attract more people into joining the teaching profession. And of course, yes, monetary also. It's not only respect and reverence and dignity, but also the money aspect has to be brought in. So with those things, let's get back the best minds of our country into teaching. And I have no doubt in the long term, we can become the top performing education system of Asia and perhaps the world also. We have been that in our history and in our ancestry. And I'm sure it can be done again if we are able to bring back the best minds of the country, the best talent of the country into the teaching profession.
Do you think, maybe I'm asking you a little early in this, that higher education should start collaborating a little more with the Indian schooling system, if I may say, or vice versa? How should that happen largely?
I think it's even bigger than that. It's not only the higher education going with the schools or even the corporates going with higher education and trying to get that bridging between the transitions. I think even beyond that, we need to go on why do children want to run behind marks? Why do parents want to run behind marks? Why do teachers and schools run behind marks? Because when you ask a parent, why do you send your child to school? The right answer should be so that they can maximize their inherent potential, excel at what they're best in. But the real answer is so that they can get into the best college. What do you need to get into the best college? The highest marks. What do those marks measure? Rote, memorization. So it's a vicious circle.
What I meant was with respect to the talent deficit we were talking about, with respect to I think as you mentioned, about the teacher profession, you have to be a B.Ed in order to be into the schooling system. What I meant was that can there be a lot of cross-pollination which can happen, which is example, the higher ed, lending that support to, at least enabling the current staff, if I may say, at what they need from this school system in a way. What I usually feel is that a lot of the time, the sort of talent which we are sending to the colleges is actually needs another 6 months to polish them to be at a certain level to begin with, for that matter. Why and vice versa. A lot of the colleges do not have that much of equipment or say wherewithal, barring few IITs and IITs, minus those, if I may say. The overall structure is pretty lopsided. I still believe that. That's the way I see it.
Yeah, and I think I think it's also about the quality or the kind of teaching pedagogy that happens in schools and higher ed, and that doesn't change too much. So the entire system of memorization and regurgitation continues in higher ed also.
Yes. Okay.
So it needs to be an overhaul of not only the schooling, but even the higher ed.
True.
And that will probably, you're right, we can retrofit it from what industry wants.
Yeah. That's what I meant basically, because otherwise we keep putting that onus to the other person, which is now you need this, but we don't have this, or whatever, vice versa. Having said this,
we have to take the mantle and grab the bull by its horns and be like, I'm the one who's going to do it, rather than saying that, listen, he didn't do it or he didn't do it. That's no point. No one's going to benefit from that.
There is a situation when there is a big gap in the lifestyle of the students pre-lockdown and post-lockdown. They have a different lifestyle. Earlier, they used to wake up 6 in the morning. They used to rush throughout the day, study till 6 or 6:30 in the evening. And now, after pandemic, what should we do to bridge that gap between the students' lifestyle today?
Thank you so much, Harmanji, for your question and for your kind comments. There is going to be transition, and as educators, as parents, as adults, we have to handhold our children into that transition of coming back to a different lifestyle. However, I think we need to do that with confidence, belief, and faith in our children, rather than with trepidation, fear, or insecurity for our students. A lot of people get into a defensive, fearful mode that how will my child do this? How will he cope like that? How will this happen? That's not a very good approach to take when getting the child back into a system which was there pre-pandemic. If you instill faith, confidence, belief in the child, automatically the child is far more confident about their own abilities, feels much more self-secure and self-assured. So I would suggest do it with faith and belief and confidence, and don't over-stress or overthink or over-worry about how will they manage back into this new transition. They will. They're very resilient, the children, and they will manage it. Of course, the beginning time will be a little bit of teething issues. There may be a little speed bumps on the road. Even the schools that have reopened campuses recently, even though you have 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th in some states that are allowed, you tend to find just maybe 20%, 30%, 50% of the class size actually comes. But that's fine. Nobody's pressurizing parents or children that, no, you have to come from tomorrow, you should come. Come when you're comfortable. This is a time of where we need to be taking our hand out to each other and helping each other through this difficult time, rather than what has been pitted, unfortunately, in the last 10 months as schools versus parents. It is no school versus parents. The child stands on two legs. One leg is the parent, the other child is the other leg is the school. If either of those wobble, the child is the one who's going to fall. So let us do this together with the parents. Parents are our partners, and I'm sure the children with their resilience will shine and rise to the occasion. Homeschooling, of course, it may be one looked at as if the school is providing what the homeschooling is. But if there are parents who genuinely believe that the role of the school is now far less important and they can homeschool their child well, then they have to realize that maybe they are experts at pedagogy and about their subject, but maybe they're not. And if they're not, then trust the school to be an expert in their pedagogy, and not only pedagogy, but in the holistic development of the child, which is all the skills, the social emotional learning, which doesn't necessarily come out even close to as well as what it can in a school environment. So when you talk about skills like collaboration, teamwork, these kinds of things will not be, or even resilience will not be developed or nurtured as well in a homeschooling environment as they can in a school environment. So if there are parents who want to do homeschooling and have the ability and have that expertise, well, do it, no problem. But if they feel that, no, I can just find an online course, or I can go on to Udemy or to the various courses available online. Education is not a transactional phenomenon. It isn't about transacting curriculum. The fundamental crux of any education system is the student-teacher relationship. One of the speakers spoke about that emotion is the harbinger to what true education is. So if that emotional connect is not there with the teacher, you find so many schools, all the educators here will agree with me on this, that you find certain students, maybe they think they're bad in maths or in history in the 5th standard, 6th standard, and suddenly they go to 7th and really excel in that subject. What changes? Maybe it's a different teacher. Maybe that human connect, that emotional connect with that teacher, the belief that the teacher has in that child, and suddenly now the child starts believing, hey, I'm not that bad at maths. I'm pretty good. I'm pretty good at history or English or whatever it might be. So one must realize that education is not a transactional phenomenon. It's not just going onto a website, onto YouTube, or finding a good course and just doing it from there. It's about the human connect, and that cannot be replaced by homeschooling or by a technology platform.